So let us please pull out our little handout sheet, and we're gonna go through how seed stock community currency circulated through the community. So I'm gonna give you guys a little minute to do that. And if you don't have the sheet, as I said, just minimize this video and listen to me talk, but be looking at the handout sheet. So you'll see on the top right-hand corner, there's a little legend here, and the C stands for community currency. And so any arrow that has a dotted line is showing the flow of community currency. Then the unbroken line has a dollar sign. So anywhere you see an arrow that's made up of an unbroken line, that is the flow of Canadian dollars. Sorry guys, I'm a little bit sick. Okay, so let's just take a few moments to look at this sheet and look at the little bubbles that you see. So you see 4 gray bubbles, right? At the top, it says Nonprofit Community Services Cooperative. And I know that's a mouthful, but essentially that is the organization that stewards the flow of the community currency through the community. And it's set up as a cooperative, which means that it's owned by its members and that members have decision-making power in the organization. And it's also a nonprofit, which I think is a really great idea because it is completely removed from the idea of a bank, because banks are for-profit institutions, right? They make money off of lending at interest, and this organization has absolutely nothing to do with that. It just stewards the flow of the currency through the community, and it works as a nonprofit. So next we have our little business. So in this case, I put a community grocer, but it can really be any local business at all. Then we have nonprofit. So as you can see, the 2 hands here are similar to the 2 hands here. So they're both nonprofit organizations, just that this one is the one that stewards the community currency, and this one is any nonprofit, any local nonprofit cause. And finally, we have our individual. So that's, anybody in the community who chooses to circulate seed stock. So we've got our seed stock stewards, our community currency stewards, the Nonprofit Community Services Cooperative. We've got our regular nonprofits, we've got our individuals, and we've got our businesses, local businesses. So let's take a look at some of these arrows now, huh? Okay, so the whole thing starts with the businesses. So the way that it works with seed stock is that a business decides, okay, I want to start, I want to participate in this. I think seed stock is a great idea. So how do I do it? So the way that it works is a business would choose to jump into the seed stock cycle by creating seed stock, essentially. So they can decide that they want to accept anywhere between, I think it was 10 and 50% of the price for whatever good or service that they provide in seed stock. So again, seed stock was not meant to replace Canadian dollars or the dominant financial currency at all. It was meant to work alongside it. So there was no chance that a business would ever be completely overwhelmed by community currency and never have any place to spend it, because they could always control the percentage at which they were accepting the seed stock. So again, in the case of seed stock, it was 10 to 50%, I believe. And so if a business had, say, 2 employees and said, okay, I like this seed stock idea, I'm gonna jump on in. They would be issued a percentage of seed stock that corresponded to their number of full-time employees. So say if they had 2 employees, they could be issued 200 seed stock. And this was done at no fee in Canadian dollars. There would be a small fee paid, but it would be paid in the seed stock that they were issued. So say if they were issued $200 in seed stock, they would pay maybe 10 of those seed stock back to the community services nonprofit that stewarded seed stock. So that's the 2 arrows here that you see. So the business decides that it wants to start accepting seed stock. The Nonprofit Community Services Cooperative decides, yep, you guys are a good fit. we're gonna give you some seed stock, and you guys are gonna give us a little part of that back as a fee, you know, that we're gonna use to cover the printing costs and stuff. So those are those 2 arrows. So now the business has 200 seed stock because it has 2 employees. And they're like, okay, so how can we use the seed stock? Typically, the way that it works is that businesses would choose to donate the majority or all of the seed stock to a local nonprofit. So they can look up local nonprofits in the area and talk to them about donating their seed stock to them. And so you might be thinking now, if you're a nonprofit, what could you really do with a community currency? Because nonprofits typically run on really small budgets and they need to pay, you know, rent and all kinds of fees that can't be paid in a community currency. So what can they do with it? Well, it is actually a really awesome fundraising tool. So think about, I don't know if any of you guys work for nonprofits, but I do. And I know that it's really hard to raise funds. And it's really hard to convince people that you're the right cause to donate to. But if somebody gives you 20 Canadian dollars and you give them back 20 seed stock, which is equivalent to 20 Canadian dollars, it's a huge incentive for people to donate money to your cause and to learn more about your cause because it's such a cool and innovative thing that you're doing. So here you can see, if you follow these 2 arrows, the individual gets brought into the picture. So the individual donates however much money to a nonprofit at a fundraiser or, you know, in any kind of way, and they get the same amount of money back, but now it's been transformed into seed stock. So essentially they haven't really given away their money, they've just exchanged it. And the nonprofit has fundraised Canadian dollars that it can use to pay for, you know, the essential fees that maintain it. And now the individual is left with an amount of seed stock, and they're like, okay, this is cool, but where can I spend the seed stock? So then they would look up the list of all the businesses that accept seed stock in their neighborhood, and they could find, for example, a local grocer that accepts seed stock. And this is really good for the individuals because it really connects them to the local small businesses that are in their vicinity. And it's also really good for the local businesses because they get to be listed on this public list of businesses on the seed stock website. So it's really a mutually beneficial thing. So the individual finds this little community grocer a few blocks down and decides to buy some vegetables and spend their seed stock there. So as you can see, the seed stock has kind of come full circle from the business that initially donated it. Eventually, seed stock will find its way back to that same business because it's part of the seed stock family now. And once the seed stock has arrived back at the business can then decide to follow this arrow and sort of reinvest the seed stock in itself. And this means that it might use the seed stock to buy goods and services that it needs to operate. So it can do business with other businesses. For example, a local grocer might buy vegetables from a farmer who accepts seed stock as partial payment. Or they can decide to give the seed stock to their employees as a kind of income supplement or a bonus or something like that, which is really cool. So we've pretty much covered all of these arrows by now. All that's left are these 2 up here. So this connects the individual directly to the NCSC. So say if I'm an individual and I've heard about seed stock and I'm really interested in getting my hands on some, but I don't know of any local nonprofits that are holding fundraisers near me. I can contact seed stock directly, and because it's a nonprofit itself, I can do the same exact thing. So I can give them my $100 and they'll send me 100 seed stock. And essentially it's a direct way for the nonprofit that stewards seed stock to do fundraising for itself. So it's exactly the same kind of situation as down here, only now it's between the individual and the actual body that stewards seed stock in the community. Pretty cool, hey? I think once you go through it, maybe listen to that little explanation of the seed stock flowchart one more time if you had a bit of a hard time following. But I think once you kind of let it sink in, it becomes pretty common sense. And it becomes really awesome just to see how, you know, different members of the community really benefit from the flow of this community currency. Seedstock was in operation for quite some time, but both of the founders of Seedstock ended up going and working on different projects. And the more research I did on community currencies, the more I found that it's really hard to bring people on board who don't have a background in alternative approaches to economics. Businesses would always think, that they needed to invest Canadian dollars or that there was some really high risk factor, when in reality there wasn't. And convincing the critical mass of businesses to come on board was quite difficult for a small team. So it ended up that they went and worked on different projects. That's not to say that the design of Seedstock was flawed. I think it was just a little bit ahead of its time. And there's tons of other community currencies out there. I know there's the Tetla dollar and the Brixton pound that you guys can research. And they work really well. And it's just about getting more people accustomed to this idea and getting more people to jump on board. I definitely think that if Seedstock would be launched now, it would have a way bigger chance of gaining lots of traction because people are much more, open to the idea. They've heard about it before. So a lot of the groundwork has been done. And I know from a lot of the people that I speak to in the communities that I've lived in, people are really interested in designing community currencies. They just need that little bit of a push. So if that's something that you're interested in, I would highly recommend that you try and get a group together in your community and see if you can design a community currency for that community. And I would love to hear about it too. So I hope that gave you guys a little bit of a description, a little bit of an understanding of how this particular community currency works and flows. And now you can go ahead and do the 2 readings that are associated with this section of the module. And hopefully that will give you an even bigger perspective on the benefits of community currencies. That pretty much concludes the main body of this module. So we've had the short intro video, we've had the 2 longer intro videos that we used to explore alternative forms of capital and a few other things too. Then we talked about degrowth, and now we've done a case study on community currencies. I just wanted to thank you guys so much for joining me for this module, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.